You're listening to the ESO Network, your station for all things geek.
The following podcast is scheduled for one fall. Coming in at 195 pounds from Studio A, he is the reigning, defending, undisputed host of the Ring of Thunder, Sexy Thor! Raw started with a tribute for James Harris, aka Kamala, who passed away last week at the age of 70. Then we opened with a contract signing for Seth Rollins versus Dominic Mysterio at SummerSlam. Samoa Joe played moderator / kinda Dominic's manager, but had to restrain himself physically so he wouldn't get fired, but he still had some daggers verbally. Dominic came out with a kendo stick, so Seth made the match a street fight so he can use every tool in the toolbox, so there's no excuse. This was also a special signing because Dominic also signed his contract to officially become a WWE superstar. He's even got his own entrance music and everything. Seth defeated Humberto Carrillo despite Dominic and his kendo stick keeping Murphy's distractions at bay. Then Seth and Murphy went full-on beatdown of Dominic, first with their fists, then with kendo sticks. Then they took it to another level and took his shirt off and kendo stick met flesh like 30 times. All the while Seth was taunting Ray through the camera. Just brutal. Angelo Dawkins defeated Andrade despite Zelina Vega, who maintains her innocence in the poisoning of Montez Ford, trying to distract the ref. Bianca Belair came out to take care of her, and they got into their match next. Bianca defeated Zelina, and Angelo Dawkins let us know that Montez will be there for SummerSlam. Then we cut to a security guard running outside towards some Retribution members outside of a glass door. He told them to get the hell out and go home, and one of them said, "You get the hell out and you go home." Ooh. Then they threw a cinder block through the glass and ran off. The Hurt Business was in the ring for the VIP lounge and not at their newly acquired Raw Underground, which isn't good business sense, but MVP's focused on his business with Apollo at SummerSlam, which does make sense. Apollo came out to gloat about his new fresh-looking United States Championship and said the following line better than anyone ever could. "I'm allowed to make bad decisions." "Why is that?" "'Cause I'm a bad man." And he promised that it's lights out for MVP at SummerSlam. Shelton Benjamin defeated Apollo after Bobby Lashley swiped at his feet, who then tried to lock in a full Nelson, but MVP told him to stop so Apollo can be healthy and show up to SummerSlam, so there's no excuse. Lashley released, and MVP tried to be all, "See, I look out for you," before trying to punch Apollo, who kicked MVP in the head and got out of dodge. Mickie James made her return to Raw to announce she's coming back to help with locker room leadership and also maybe go after some more gold on top of the 6 championships she already has. She was last seen roughly sometime around late 2018 as Alexa Bliss's BFF. They've been BFFs and rivals for roughly 2 years at that point, going back to Alexa winning the SmackDown Women's Championship from Becky Lynch and all that La Luchadora stuff. In the storyline for the Evolution pay-per-view, when Alexa was supposed to face Trish Stratus and Mickie was supposed to face Lita, that was when Alexa's concussion issues started happening, so those 2 singles matches got turned into a tag match. Then Alicia Fox replaced Alexa on that team, and Alexa played their manager, which she can also do quite well. Anyways, Mickie's back, and first on the plate is Natalya and Lana, who haven't been seen in a month or so. They're still the Seth and Murphy of the women's division, but Lana did come up with a pretty great line questioning how Mickie can be a locker room leader when she doesn't even have a TikTok, and calling Natalya the best of all time and turn it into #boat. Mickie pointed out that boats sink, and she'll see them next week. In possibly the shortest 8-man tag match ever, the Viking Raiders and Ricochet and Cedric Alexander defeated Akira Tozawa and his ninjas when one of the ninjas refused to go in after the other 2 ninjas got waxed, so Tozawa and the ninja got out to the ramp when the ninja summoned a ref and rolled up Tozawa to become new 24/7 champ, and it turns out the ninja was R-Truth. This is like 38 times, I think. Drew McIntyre was in a backstage interview with more strong words for Randy Orton and told him that evolution has passed him by. And when asked if Kevin Owens rips the torch from Randy that he ripped from Mick Foley, McIntyre said he and KO will have a long talk about the future of Monday Night Raw. Liv Morgan had a match with Peyton Royce next, and Ruby Riott accompanied her to the ring, which was a very pleasant sight to see. But alas, it got rocky when Billie Kay hopped on the apron to cause a distraction, so Ruby hopped on the apron to get her down, but the ref and Liv only saw Ruby. Peyton got the 1-2-3 on Liv, and when Ruby went to check on her, Liv wanted her to get way back. Well, damn. Good things do take time and effort. We approached the third hour of Raw, which means Raw Underground action. Foo-foo. Riddick Moss, who's been on a roll of sorts on main event, defeated Cal Bloom. Asuka defeated Bayley despite Sasha Banks trying to distract and interfere to try to make sure that she won't have to face Asuka for the Raw Women's Championship at SummerSlam, but it probably didn't help that Bayley was mocking Asuka with Kairi Sane impressions as if Asuka didn't have enough motivation going in. Back to Raw Underground, Arturo Ruas pretty much kicked a dude's head off. Dabba-Kato just about twisted a dude's nuts off. Then we got to who Raw Underground was truly meant for. Shayna Baszler. Shane wouldn't let her fight Dabba-Kato because I guess intergender wrestling isn't allowed even in a place that has no rules. Instead, 3 women took her on, and the only one that gave Shayna anything of a fight was Emily Anzulis, a former contestant of the Titan Games, because she is jacked and put Shayna in some holds that I can believe are quite effective, but the Queen of Spades emerged victorious. The camera cut to Retribution having turned over a car. Cool. Finally, we got Randy Orton versus Kevin Owens, which was a good contest, but the real shit was after. Once Randy took care of Kevin, he had to talk to Ric Flair, who's been by his side here in the last couple months, because he wasn't happy about Rick getting him into that match with KO. It just didn't need to happen. He told Rick it was because of Rick's ego and wants to still be in the spotlight. Rick got back on the mic and said yes, he's not the Ric Flair of old, and he still does want to be in that spotlight, but the main reason he's been doing this, because when he almost died a couple years ago, he made it a point to make sure everyone he loved knew how he felt. He loves Randy and wants him to pass his record of 16 world championships, his record, not John Cena's, and wants to be there to witness it as long as he can. It seemed like things were resolved and got a heartwarming moment out of it, until Rick turned around and Randy hit him in the balls. Randy lined up for the punt, and a perfectly timed Retribution-induced blackout meant we only heard Randy punt kick Rick's head. When the lights came back on, Randy got out when Drew McIntyre ran in to check on Flair with the officials and yelled at Randy that he's an evil son of a bitch, while Randy just made these faces.
What's new on the 42 cast? Let's ask my co-hosts.
We're talking about Doctor Who,
comic book shows and movies,
and we're talking about all things Star Trek,
and so much more.
Check us out on Google Play, Stitcher Radio, and iTunes.
It's only on the 42 cast, your ultimate answer to fandom, geekiness, and everything.
So Nathan, when are we finally talking Babylon 5?
On Impact, Willie Mack and Eric Young were beating the shit out of each other backstage after Young assaulted Mac's friend Rich Swann last week, and went all the way to the main stage till they got separated by security. It got made into an official match with Eric Young getting the win. New Wrestle House. While Taya was making everyone watch her Impact debut, Crazy Steve reunited with his Decay partner Rosemary and was helping her scheme to get over her jealousy as Bravo was massaging Taya's shoulders. Meanwhile, Cody Deaner and Alicia were helping Cousin Jake and Susie get ready for their date. Reno Scum jumped Rhino and got the wad of cash Hernandez hired them to get for him. Jordan Grace defeated Kimber Lee. And on the new episode of Locker Room Talk, Madison Rayne introduced the show's first sponsor, Thunder Talk. Kidding. I wish. The first sponsor is Heath with a commercial and a hashtag Heath for Impact, so he can get on that Impact roster. Similar to that, check out hashtag Creed for G4 and listen to WTLK on Thunder Talk issue 30 for more about hashtagging to get sexy Thor on Up Up Down Down. And more on that at the end of this episode. Back to Impact. The guests for Locker Room Talk were Rob Van Dam and Katie Forbes, who were interviewed for roughly 2.3 seconds before they started making out and ran Madison off. Then they interviewed each other until Sami Callihan appeared and started wailing on RVD. The Rascals were clowning around with Trey Miguel wearing a suicide mask when Moose came up to them because Wentz was wearing an EC3 jacket. He gave his invitation to challenge for the TNA Heavyweight Championship to Trey because he thought he was suicide. They laughed about it after, and Trey said, "That's why they say keep your mask on." He's not wrong. Back at Wrestle House, Crazy Steve suggested Rosemary make Bravo jealous, so she reluctantly put a love spell on Larry D. Larry was so bewitched that he even turned down the popcorn that AC Romero offered him, which bewildered AC, and they got into an argument. You know what that means. Match time! Larry D knocked out AC Romero, and he did it all for Rosemary. Meanwhile, Susie and Jake State began as awkwardly as you would think. Knockouts champion Deonna Purrazzo challenged Jordynne Grace to the first ever 30-minute Knockouts Iron Man match at Emergence. Tasha Steelz and Kiera Hogan defeated Havoc and Nevaeh in a no DQ match, with Havoc going through a table and a street sign. Comeback by Nevaeh, stifled by Kiera Hogan. Gallows and Anderson are back and want Fulton and Austin, and are going to stay in the ring till they get them. Scott D'Amore said he got real Hall and Nash vibes from them. Moose got threatened by an EC3 projection, or EC3 ghost. It's wrestling, anything's possible. Gallows and Anderson came to the ring and threw out Dez and the Real Suicide, who were having a match, and waited for Ace Austin and Madman Fulton, who appeared on the screen and said they aren't doing anything now, but they'll fight at Emergence. On Wrestle House, Susie and Jake State ended innocently enough, till Jake said he liked her better this way and not the crazy zombie version, which made her launch into some Su Yung vibes briefly and scared him off. Alicia asked what happened, and Susie didn't know, so she just chalked it to Alicia giving bad advice. Alicia didn't like that, of course, so match time! Susie hit Alicia with the most devastating move in all of Wrestle House, the surprise roll-up. Then Taya came out to bring everyone back inside. Kylie Ray wanted to go to bed, and someone pointed out she is the #1 contender, and Taya asked if she's ever beaten a champion before. Tommy Dreamer was about to yell, "Match time!" but Rosemary shut that shit down. But they will face off next week. Eddie Edwards' Impact World Championship Open Challenge was answered by a debuting Brian Myers, who, just like Deonna Purrazzo, got to look way better than he did in WWE. Despite hitting his knee on a barricade earlier in the match, Eddie was able to pull off a Boston knee party and get the 1, 2, 3.
You have 30 seconds to describe Thunder Talk.
It's pop culture.
With a twist.
It's music.
LGBTQ+.
And comedy.
Well, dark comedy.
It's nerd junk. It's comic books.
Video games.
Conventions.
Yeah, nerd junk.
And social commentary.
It's woke, yo.
Yeah, and nerd junk.
Woke nerd junk.
Thunder Talk is all over the place.
Every place you want to be.
Thunder Talk is a proud member of the ESO Network. Find us at thundertalk.org and download us on all podcast platforms.
On NXT, Karrion Kross defeated Danny Burch, straight murdered him. Then Keith Lee came to the ring with a contract for an NXT Championship match at TakeOver 30. Scarlett handed Kross the contract. He signed it, she kissed the cover and handed it back to Keith. When he opened it, a friggin' fireball came out and seemingly damaged his eyes. Wowza. Drake Maverick and Killian Dane were having a match which was intercut with scenes of Keith getting in an ambulance. By the time he drove off, Undisputed Era pulled up, stormed the ring, and beat Dane and Maverick out. Adam Cole challenged Pat McAfee to come to NXT next week so Adam can look him in the eye and tell him he's going to whoop that ass at TakeOver. Santos Escobar defeated Tyler Breeze thanks to some interference by Wilde and Mendoza. Then as all three were about to pounce on Breeze, Fandango came out with his elbow in a sling and broke the stick off what looked like a mop and tried to fend them off, but they overpowered him. Isaiah Swerve Scott came out and socked all three members of Legado del Fantasma and stood tall over the champion, who still has only lost to him. Mia Yim defeated Indy Hartwell by submission while clearing an emotional hurdle of having just returned from the hospital and making sure Keith was good. Bronson Reed defeated Damian Priest in probably the biggest win, at least in singles competition, of his NXT career. Aaliyah and Mercedes Martinez defeated Casey Catanzaro and Caden Carter. Then Rhea Ripley came out to settle some unfinished business with Martinez. Aaliyah and Mercedes eventually ganged up on Rhea till Shotzi Blackheart came out and took out Aaliyah and Mercedes. Rhea and Shotzi have to be the most metal tandem in all of pro wrestling. Don't at me. We got to go back to the Gargano's house where Candice was reading to their dog Padme a fairy tale and talking about Deegan Knox claiming to be the hero while Johnny was on a ladder changing the light bulb and talking about climbing the ladder to get the North American Championship and fix NXT. By the way, he still has that picture of Doc Hendricks in his house that was there. It's been there since Takeover in Your House. Cameron Grimes pinned Kushida in the final triple threat qualifier for the North American Championship ladder match at Takeover, but the mystery opponent was not pinned. And who was the mystery opponent? Velveteen Dream. He hasn't been seen since Takeover in Your House. He was not happy about losing, even though he wasn't pinned, so he's in the second chance qualifier, but that didn't stop him from slapping the shit out of Kushida. He came face to face with Finn Balor, who appeared behind him, and now I'm just like, holy shit, because remember early in the summer, when Dream and Balor were feuding for like a week, then Damian Priest assaulted Balor in the locker room, and it was those two all the way to In Your House, while Dream took on Adam Cole? Yeah. Long-term story seeds. Fuck.
What will you do when your child asks?
What were Saturday morning cartoons?
What were Saturday morning cartoons? What's wrong with you?
Or will you handle it the right way?
Sit down, baby girl. Let me introduce you to my friend Mark McCrae.
Join Dan Klink and I on the Best Saturdays of Our Lives podcast as we take a unique behind-the-scenes look at the history and dynamics of animation with plenty of laughs along the way.
The Best Saturdays of Our Lives podcast is a proud member of the ESO Network.
On AEW Dark, Ray Phoenix defeated Lee Johnson. Shawn Spears defeated Alex Chamberlain, then smacked him with his Infinity Gauntlet. Billy and Austin Gunn defeated Mbadu and Shawn Dean. Kip Sabian defeated Michael Stevens. Private Party defeated Griff Garrison and Brian Pillman Jr. Jurassic Express defeated Corey Hollis. Pineapple Pete and Aaron Solo. Natural Nightmares defeated the Hybrid 2. Penelope Ford defeated Rachel Ellering. The Butcher and the Blade defeated SCU. And speaking of Rachel Ellering, we go down to the results of night 2 or week 2 of the Deadly Draw, the women's tag team tournament. Big Swole and Lil Swole defeated Leva Bates and Roche Chanel in night 2 of the quarterfinals and will face the Nightmare Sisters in the semifinals. And then Ivelisse and Diamante defeated Dasha, making her AEW in-ring debut from the interviewer/announcer side. And Rachel Ellering, and going back to her, she is the daughter of Road Warriors manager Paul Ellering. And Ivelisse and Diamante will face Anna Jay and Tay Connie in the semifinals. On Dynamite, Tag Team Appreciation Night started with the Young Bucks, the foundation of the AEW Tag Division, getting jumped by the Dark Order, but they still picked up a win over Evil Uno and Stu Grayson, despite towards the end dragging Matt Jackson to the tunnel and having Dark Order goons block the entrance. Nick Jackson got out of the fatality and pinned Evil Uno. MJF came out to the podium in the ring after a throwback to MJF's earlier career when he was a bodyguard for Samoa Joe, and it was Samoa Joe walking down the hallway and pushing MJF out of the way. Well, this time MJF pushed Lee Johnson out of the way. but he came to the podium with his campaign staff to run his mouth some more about Jon Moxley until Mox's music came on. He sent Wardlow and his staff out to the crowd where Mox usually makes his entrance, but Mox actually came through the entrance tunnel for the first time. He attacked MJF, hit him with a paradigm shift, and told him they're not even after what MJF pulled last week until All Out. Matthew Hardy was doing a backstage interview telling us he'll be medically clear on August 22nd, then he's going to make Sammy Guevara bleed like he did. And also with his head injury, he kept sort of going back and forth between his multiverse personalities. He saw someone in a cap and jacket that looked like Sammy and attacked, but it turned out to be referee Mike Posey. Oops. Cody defeated Scorpio Sky in an absolute banger that even had the whole Nightmare family come out with him. Mike Chioda was the referee. He's been in the business for about 33 years, at least most, if not all of them, with the WWE. And he was one of the more surprising releases when WWE let all those people go earlier in the year. And Cody retains his TNT championship that finally has the gold plating, but once the match was over, Brody Lee was on the Jumbotron telling Cody that he challenges him next Dynamite, and he'll even give back the old silver TNT belt. And that was when I realized Dynamite was moved to the same night TakeOver 30 is. So I'm going to have an easy Wednesday, but now that weekend is even more crammed. Wonderful. Kenny Omega and Hangman Page defeated Jungle Boy and Luchasaurus to retain the AEW Tag Team titles. Even Marco Stunt got a Snapdragon suplex because heelish Kenny is inclusive like that. Santana and Ortiz poured bleach on the luggage of Sue, Trent's mother, and left it in the shower because that's what they think about apologizing. The Young Bucks and FTR were out in the ring with Tully Blanchard, Arn Anderson, and the Rock and Roll Express to honor them, and everyone was saying all sorts of nice things till Tully got on the mic and said neither of them are even champions, and stirred up some old beef with Arn because Tully's guy is Sean Spears and Arn is Cody's coach, and Tully didn't appreciate Arn interfering with Sean on last year's All Out. While they were almost at blows with the Young Bucks trying to be peacemakers, FTR hit R&R with their finisher and got out of Dodge. Omega and Page came out, so you can get our WTFs in. Chris Jericho wants Mike Chioda to ref his match with Orange Cassidy and tried to persuade him to not call it fairly. Shida defeated Heather Monroe using the same stretch muffler that Big E has been using as of late, and she said she's still waiting for a challenger at All Out. Jake the Snake Roberts was trying to cut a promo in the locker room while Lance Archer was throwing dudes around behind him. Then Lance got impatient and got to the point, showing that Jake has "Everybody Dies" written on his back. In the main event, Orange Cassidy defeated Chris Jericho despite a major distraction when Best Friends and Inner Circle brawled outside the tunnels, and Jake Hager slammed Orange big time. Mike Chioda was also fair and wouldn't look the other way when Jericho wanted to hit Orange with Floyd the baseball bat. Orange Cassidy is going to the moon, and most importantly is off the hook for $7,000. On the Hidden Gems episode of NXT UK, then NXT champion Adam Cole defeated then NXT UK Tag Team champion and Liverpool's #1 Zach Gibson from the grizzled young veterans at Download Festival on June 16, 2019. Zaya Brookside defeated Nina Samuels on March 6, 2020, and Pete Dunne defeated Alexander Wolf on July 20th, 2019.
Hello. Have you ever wondered how much Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster sold Superman's rights to DC for? Or which popular football star was the Sam Wilson the Falcons' physical appearance based on? You can find all that and more at the History of Comic Books podcast, a podcast dedicated to the creators, events, history, and the companies that made the great comic book medium. Hosted and created by your friendly neighborhood JT Wheatley. Please give it a listen at iTunes, Spreaker, Stitcher, and all our podcasting platforms. Thank you, and go ahead and enjoy yourself a good comic book.
SmackDown was going to start with Big E versus John Morrison, but Retribution stormed the ring and kicked Morrison's and E's asses and left. They were sitting backstage with most of the men's locker room figuring out what to do, and E gave a great speech and teased feuds with Sheamus and Corbin while declaring he'll show he's not afraid of Retribution and will beat John Morrison tonight. Sasha Banks and Bayley took over ring announcing for the Triple Brand Battle Royal for the rights to face Bayley at the SmackDown Women's Championship at SummerSlam, and announced they'll be defending the women's tag titles at Payback a week after SummerSlam. It was the Iconics, Tegan Nox, Shotzi Blackheart, Lacey Evans, Asuka, who just started beating Sasha and Bayley out of the ring. Then everyone else came out together like Dana Brooke, Bianca Belair, Nikki Cross, Shayna Baszler, Naomi, Tamina, and Ruby Riott and Liv Morgan. And wouldn't you know it, Asuka won. It was at the expense of Shayna Baszler, so that was like Royal Rumble repeating itself all over again. Shayna almost had Asuka's feet on the floor, but Sasha and Bayley tried to pull Asuka down, and she knocked both of them to the floor. The distraction gave Shayna the all-clear to bump her down, but Asuka landed on Sasha and Bayley's prone bodies, so she was still in. Also, a storyline I saw was when the Iconics were eliminated early on, so they pulled Liv and Ruby off the apron and eliminated them. Liv was only okay with this back in the Rumble when she eliminated Lana and got dragged down herself. This time not so much, as the Iconics and the soon-to-be Riot Squad fought at ringside till officials broke it up. I smell a #1 contenders match for the tag titles. But congrats to Asuka for getting to pull double SummerSlam duty. Also, this Battle Royal. Now, usually with a lot of Battle Royals in the Royal Rumble, occasionally there will be somebody who did get eliminated or is illegal, pull down somebody so their feet hit the floor and they get disqualified. It was already a little weird thing that happens in there, but this particular Battle Royal just had to happen a little too much for my taste, but whatever. Again, we have Asuka pulling double duty. We've got Riot Squad versus Iconic story getting heated up some more. It's pretty good. Then Sasha and Bayley were talking about it backstage afterwards, and Bayley basically said that she can win now that she has something important to fight for. What she was fighting for last time was for Sasha to not have to face Asuka at SummerSlam. And this is the story that keeps on giving when it comes to seeds. Then Mandy Rose challenged Sonya Deville to a hair versus hair match at SummerSlam. I guess the horror show isn't over. Nikki Cross finally found Alexa backstage after 2 weeks and gave her a big ol' hug. But Alexa was being distant and said she was just here to get answers from Braun. Sheamus defeated Shorty G, who came out to the ring with some new music that had me thinking he was going to grab a mic and said, "My name is Chad fucking Gable." But alas, he did not. AJ Styles introduced the phenomenal Intercontinental Statistics System, basically piss, because of everybody asking him who he'll face next and that he should face this person based on these statistics. But he realized he's a nerd for statistics in baseball and football, so he'll go with it, even though he'd rather just enjoy being Intercontinental Champion and having his belt next to him when he's playing games on his Twitch stream, twitch.tv/StylesClash. Based on his system, he ranks #1 himself, and nobody is #2 through 5. Jeff Hardy came out and tried to sell AJ on the facts that Hardy's first singles title was the IC title, and everyone would love to see Jeff Hardy versus AJ Styles. Styles seemed intrigued, but of course he said no. So Jeff beat him up and signed his name on the whiteboard, and it turned out to be permanent marker. Unfortunately, his assistant found out the hard way. His assistant formerly being Abyss of TNA, so that was a nice little reunion there. Grand Metalik defeated Shinsuke Nakamura when towards the end the music of Lucha House Party dropped and the third member Kalisto showed up. Kalisto hasn't been seen for quite a few months, I think like before lockdown. Kalisto and Lince Dorado took out Cesaro and Metalik pinned Nakamura. Shorty G apologized to Matt Riddle for attacking him for the King's ransom, and they made up until Corbin attacked Riddle from behind. Shorty, you sneaky bastard. The interview with Alexa Bliss basically outlined her and Braun's history, the fact that being in the Fiend's presence is compelling and captivating like a moth to the flame, and when asked how she felt about Braun saying he doesn't give a damn about her, she just looked away and was quiet into the commercial break. If you need more clarification on her side of the story, just listen to Decode by Paramore from the first Twilight movie, because that's where it sounds like the story is sliding to. Possibly. All the good stories need time to develop and unpack, though. I mean, last year the Firefly Funhouse debuted on the Raw after Mania, but we didn't get Fiend action till that SummerSlam, so, you know, I'm letting this story breathe and unravel. I mean, probably a bad word for it. Develop, breathe, all that stuff. You know what I mean. I mean, come on, we spent 10 years waiting for Endgame. I mean, we can hope for the best for long-term storytelling. Big E versus John Morris in round 2 started off innocently enough. Then Miz tried to interfere. Otis came out to yell at Miz. Most of the roster went ringside to wait for Retribution, who were actually backstage attacking people and even terrorizing poor Kayla Braxton, which is not cool. The ringside roster was mobilized to help out backstage and sniff out Retribution, but they seemed to have dipped out. Big E made Morrison tap out while he was celebrating. Sheamus brogue kicked him and the lights began to flicker again. Sheamus turned around expecting Retribution, but instead he got Braun Strowman with a shaved head. Oh shit. Braun was on the mic and said he wanted to eat the Fiend's entrails, or some crazy shit, and while he was waiting for the Fiend, Alexa came out instead and wanted to know what the hell was going on with him. He accused her of manipulating him and his emotions during their Team Little Big days, and brushed her off because he wants the Fiend. Also, he said he doesn't trust her because anyone who comes into contact with the Fiend becomes bad, which is interesting because it shows he's turning bad, but doesn't even realize it. Alexa tried slapping some sense into Braun, which caused him to pick her up over his head and threaten to throw her over the ring if the Fiend didn't show up. The lights slowly went out as Braun was getting closer to throwing Alexa, and when the lights went out, he dropped her in the ring. When the red light came on, the Fiend was standing by Alexa, and a close-up of Braun was on the video screen laughing. And oof, that monster has some bags under his eyes. Braun and Bray were laughing at each other as the episode ended. On 205 Live, Legado del Fantasma defeated Everrise, and Arya Daivari defeated Jake Atlas. Welcome back, Daivari De Niro. And that's the 1, 2, 3. Before we ring the bell, just a couple things. Like I said earlier in the episode, if you've heard my recent WTLK for Thunder Talk, I was dropping the hashtag Creed for G4 campaign that Xavier Woods, aka Up Down Down host Austin Creed, has been dropping on social media, which has inspired me to start my own hashtag campaign, hashtag SexyThor4, the digit 4, UUDD. I'm not trying to host it. I could never do a better job than Creed, and it's his creation anyway. I'm just trying to be big enough to be on it. It would be the coolest video and a great conversation between two men who love wrestling, comic books, and video games, who are from two locations that the other have experience in. What I mean by that is, I'm from Greenville, South Carolina, and he has, or had, I don't know if they're still there, family up here, and is a graduate of Furman University. So we went to school near each other because I went to middle and high school in nearby Travelers Rest, and he's from Atlanta. And I don't need to tell you again about my experiences in my favorite city because you already know. And of course, we've both been on the wrong side of 28-3 with close friends that still try to burn us with it. Now I know this campaign isn't going to succeed anytime soon, but I don't care if it's 1 year, 2 years, 5 years. I'm taking this hashtag with me and all the big money Thunder moves I make until Sexy Thor is playing a video game on YouTube with Creed and Breeze and people in the wonderful world of wrestling he calls home. So remember, hashtag SexyThor4, the digit 4, UUDD. And some late breaking news, starting this Friday on SmackDown through to the foreseeable future, WWE events are moving out of the Performance Center into the Amway Center, still in Orlando, bringing virtual fans via live video on massive LED boards, not unlike what the NBA has been doing, along with the state-of-the-art set, pyrotechnics, lasers, cutting-edge graphics, and drone cameras. Look, we obviously don't own the rights to the word Thunder, but that's not my beef here. But as the allfather of the Thunderverse, who has been breathing, eating, and sleeping this business for the last couple years, there's some opportunities there. But hey, that's okay. Maybe I'm still kind of a small fish. That's fine. Only grows the chip on my shoulder that is going to be there post-pandemic when fans and shows happen, and I can find ways to make my way in the business. It's cool. Kick butts, not nuts.
This has been a broadcast of the ESO Network. Be part of the crew and help support our shows by donating to our ESO Patreon or by shopping through Amazon.com or the TeePublic store, which can all be found at www.esonetwork.com. The ESO Network, your station for all things geek.